It started on a Tuesday evening, right around the time I was trying to get dinner on the table without burning anything. The pasta water was boiling too hard, the kitchen smelled like garlic and jarred marinara, and my two kids were at the counter with their school folders spread open like they owned the place. My husband, Ethan, texted that he was running late again. Meetings stacking up, the usual. My phone rang while I was wiping my hands on a dish towel. I glanced at the screen and saw my sister's name. I answered with my shoulder, pinning the phone to my ear. "Hey!" Her voice was bright, almost bouncy. "So, Maddie is turning 9 next month." "Maddie's 9 already?" I said, stirring the sauce and checking the timer like it might save me from everything else happening at once. "I know," she said, "and we're doing a big party this year, at that new place downtown, the fancy one with the indoor play zone and the catering." "The one near the shopping district?" I asked, because I'd seen it from the car and my kids had pointed at it like it was Disneyland. "Yes, that one. It's going to be so cute." "That sounds great," I said, and I meant it. "The kids will love it. They've been talking about Maddie's birthday since Christmas." There was a pause. Not long, just long enough that I stopped stirring. "Actually," my sister said, and the pitch of her voice shifted a little, like she was trying to step around something on the floor. "I wanted to talk to you about that." I turned the heat down without thinking. "Okay. We're keeping it kind of specific," she said. "Just close family and Maddie's school friends. The venue has numbers and catering minimums, and you know how it is." I waited, holding the wooden spoon still. She exhaled. "You and Ethan are obviously invited," she said quickly. "But we're not really doing the cousin thing this year." For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard her. Like I'd missed a word, or she'd said, cousin theme, like a weird party idea. "You mean, my kids aren't invited?" I asked. "Don't say it like that," she said immediately. "It's not personal. Maddie's just at that age where she wants it to feel cooler, more about her actual friends. She doesn't want a bunch of little kids running around." My daughter was 7. My son was 5. Little, yes, but not strangers, and definitely not a bunch. I stared at the stove as if it could explain what my sister was doing. "They're her cousins," I said. "They adore her." "I know," she said, like she was trying to sound reasonable. "And you and Ethan are still coming. Your family." Something in me went very quiet. Not anger, just a clean, calm line forming. "So you want me to show up?" I said, "without my kids." "It's just a birthday party," she said, "not a whole family reunion." I could hear my daughter in the background asking my son what he wanted to drink. Their voices were normal, safe. They had no idea I was standing there listening to something that would land on them later like a dropped plate. I took a breath, slow enough that I could feel it in my ribs. "Have you told them?" "Told who?" "My kids," I said. "Have you told them they're not invited to their cousin's birthday?" A small pause, then a light laugh that didn't match anything. "I figured you'd handle that," she said. "You're their mom." I held the phone a little farther from my ear, just to give myself space. "I'm not doing that," I said evenly. "If my children aren't welcome, Ethan and I aren't coming either." "Oh my God," she said, and I could hear the immediate irritation. "Don't be dramatic. Mom and Dad are going to be so disappointed if you don't come." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you excluded 2 kids from a family event." "It's not a family event," she snapped, the polite tone dropping fully now. "It's Maddie's birthday party. There's a difference." "Not to a 7-year-old, I said, still quiet. "And not to a 5-year-old. She sighed, the kind of sigh she always used when she decided I was being difficult on purpose. "Fine," she said. "Do whatever you want, but don't blame me when Mom asks why you're acting like this." Then she hung up. I stood there for a moment with the phone still in my hand, listening to the empty line. The kitchen clock ticked. The pasta water hissed. The sauce bubbled once, slow and thick. I put the phone face down on the counter. When Ethan got home later, after bedtime stories and toothbrush negotiations, and the hallway light left on just a crack, I told him what happened. He listened without interrupting. He didn't pace or rant. He sat at the edge of our bed and loosened his tie like it was suddenly too tight. By the time I got to the part where she said, "You're their mom, you can handle it," his jaw had set in that way it did when he was trying not to show exactly how angry he was. "So," he said when I finished. "So?" I echoed. He nodded once. "We're not going." "We're not going," I agreed, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. 2 days later, my mother called. I was loading the dishwasher. The plates clinked softly, and I remember thinking, very clearly, that if I moved slowly enough, maybe I wouldn't have to answer. But I answered anyway. "Your sister says you're not coming to Maddie's party," my mother said. Not a question. A complaint dressed up as concern. "What is going on?" I explained it once, calmly, the way you explain something you never thought you'd have to explain. My mother made sympathetic noises in the right places, but the conclusion was the same one I should have expected. "Well," she said, "it's your sister's choice. You can't force her to invite everyone." "I'm not forcing anything," I said. "I'm choosing not to attend something where my children are deliberately excluded." "You're making it bigger than it needs to be," she said. "Just go. The kids won't even notice." I stared at the dishwasher rack, one hand resting on a coffee mug. "They'll notice," I said. "They'll notice when every other grandchild is there except them." My mother's tone sharpened. "You're being stubborn." "I'm being a parent," I said. After that, the next few weeks had a tension to them that didn't show up in big fights. It showed up in little things, group texts, short replies, silence where there used to be normal chatter. My sister sent party details in the family chat. Time, address, a link to the venue, a note about where to park. I didn't respond. My brother messaged separately, asking if there was drama. I gave him the clean version. He said he understood, but he was still taking his kids because he didn't want to create problems. I didn't argue with him. I just read it and set my phone down. The morning of the party, the weather was bright in that early spring way, sunlight coming in sharp through the windows like it had something to prove. Ethan and I took our kids to the aquarium instead. We made it a full day. Lunch first at their favorite little burger place where the booths were sticky and the fries were always too salty. Then the aquarium, slow and easy, letting them press their hands to the glass and argue about which fish looked mean. We didn't mention the party across town. Why would we? We were standing in front of the jellyfish exhibit when my daughter tugged on my sleeve. "Mom," she said, looking up at me, serious in that way kids get when they've been thinking about something for a while. "Is Maddie's birthday party today?" I felt the drop in my stomach before my brain caught up. Ethan's posture changed beside me, subtle but immediate, his hand tightening gently on our son's shoulder like he was bracing for impact. I forced my voice to stay normal. "How do you know about that, sweetheart?" She blinked at me. "Grandma told me yesterday," she said. She asked what I was going to wear. I didn't answer right away. I watched the jellyfish drift and pulse in the blue light, slow and quiet, as if nothing in the world could rush them. Then I looked down at my daughter, and I tried to decide what I could say that wouldn't break something I couldn't put back together. And before I could choose the words, she asked the next question. "So, are we going after the aquarium?" I held her gaze, and I could already see the worry starting to form. Then I took another slow breath, and I said, "No, honey." And the silence right after that felt bigger than the whole room. Then I waited. My daughter stared at me for a second like she thought I'd misunderstood her. "No?" she repeated softer. "But why?" I could feel my son watching us now, too. He didn't have the whole story, but he could read the air in a room the way kids do. When something shifts, they feel it in their stomachs before they have words for it. I knelt down so I was level with her. The aquarium floor was slightly damp in places, and the air smelled faintly like salt water and sanitizer. Behind the glass, the jellyfish kept drifting, slow and indifferent, their bodies lit from within. "This party is mostly for Maddie's school friends," I said, keeping my tone even. "It's one of those kids from school kind of parties." My daughter's eyebrows pulled together. "But I'm her cousin." "I know," I said. "You are." She blinked hard, like she was trying to make the information fit somewhere it didn't belong. "So why can't we go?" There are moments as a parent where you have about 3 seconds to choose a story your child can carry. Not the whole truth, just the part that won't hurt them more than necessary. I didn't want to say, "Your aunt decided you didn't fit the vibe." I didn't want to say, "Adults can be unkind and still expect you to smile at them." So I went with the cleanest thing I could manage. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "people plan things in a way that doesn't include everyone. And when that happens, we don't chase after it." My daughter's eyes filled, quiet and fast. "Does Aunt Claire not like us?" My son's lower lip started to wobble. He wrapped his arms around Ethan's leg like he needed to hold on to something solid. Ethan's face stayed calm, but I could see the muscle working near his jaw. He leaned down and picked our son up, settling him against his shoulder. "No," Ethan said gently, the way he did when he was trying to keep his own anger from spilling into the room. "This isn't about you. You didn't do anything wrong." That made my daughter cry anyway, because kids are smart enough to know when adults are changing the subject. I reached up and wiped a tear off her cheek with my thumb. "Hey," I said quietly. "Look at me." She did, but her face was crumpled. "I wanted to see Maddie," she whispered. "I know," I said. "I know you did." For a second, I considered calling my sister right there. Not to argue, just to say, "Fix this. Right now." But I already knew how that call would go. She'd sound annoyed, like I'd interrupted her day. She'd say it was complicated. She'd say I was overreacting. And then I'd be standing in the aquarium, trying to hold myself together while my kids listened to me beg for basic decency. So I didn't. I stood up slowly, took my daughter's hand, and we walked out the way we came. We finished the aquarium anyway. We did the turtles. We did the little touch tank where you're allowed to brush a starfish with 2 fingers. I kept my voice light. I asked questions. I pointed out things on the wall placards like it mattered. But my daughter didn't chatter the way she usually did. And my son stayed quiet, his cheek pressed into Ethan's shoulder, his small fingers gripping Ethan's shirt. In the car, the silence was almost physical, the kind of silence that fills the space where music usually goes. When we got home, I set them up on the couch with a movie and snacks. I chose the one they'd seen a dozen times because it was familiar and safe. I brought out the good popcorn, the kind in the silver bag, and cut up apple slices like that would fix anything. Ethan kissed the top of my daughter's head and told her he'd be right back. Then he disappeared into his office. At first, I thought he needed a minute to cool down. Ethan had always been controlled. He didn't yell. He didn't slam doors. When he was angry, he got quiet and precise. He would do dishes with a little too much focus. He would fold laundry like he was making a point to the universe. So when the office door closed, I assumed he was taking a breath. But about 45 minutes later, I heard his phone ring. Then again. Then my phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't pick it up right away. I just watched the screen light up and fade. Then it lit up again. I walked down the hall and paused outside his office door. I could hear him speaking, calm and low, the way he did when he was on a work call. Not the warm voice he used with the kids, not the neutral voice he used with family. The business voice, the one that meant he was already 5 steps ahead. I knocked once and opened the door. Ethan looked up. His laptop was open. His tie was off. His sleeves were rolled to the forearms. On his desk, next to a neat stack of papers, his phone sat face up, vibrating every few seconds. He didn't look flustered. He looked settled, like a decision had already been made and the rest was just process. "What's going on?" I asked. He turned his phone toward me without a word. 15 missed calls. My sister, my mother, my brother, a couple of cousins I barely talked to, even an aunt who only called when someone was sick or engaged. My stomach tightened again, but this time it was different. This wasn't family awkwardness. This was something bigger. "What did you do?" I asked quietly. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He tapped his trackpad and turned the laptop so I could see the screen. An email thread was open. The subject line included a company name I recognized because my sister had said it often enough over the last year. Hawthorne Property and Development. That was my brother-in-law's company. I sat down slowly in the chair across from him. "Why are you looking at Mark's company email?" Ethan's eyes stayed on mine. "Because Mark has been trying to secure a contract with a group I'm involved with," he said. I blinked. "What kind of contract?" "The kind they've been chasing for months," he said. "The kind your sister keeps calling their next level deal." I remembered it now. The constant hints. The way my sister talked about it like it was already theirs. The school district she wanted. The house she'd been watching. The way she'd mentioned more than once that Mark just needed one big project to make everything easier. Ethan's phone buzzed again. He ignored it. "What did you say to them?" I asked. Ethan leaned back slightly, hands folded, calm as if we were discussing something routine. "I made a call," he said. My throat went dry. "A call to who?" "The acquisitions team," he said. "The people overseeing the partnership." I stared at him. "Ethan?" He didn't flinch. "I told them to pause the deal." I felt my pulse in my ears. "Pause it?" He nodded once. "For now." The room was very quiet except for the faint hum of his computer fan and the distant sound of the movie in the living room. Cartoon voices, bright and cheerful, completely unaware. I looked down at the laptop again. The emails were formal, polite, full of bullet points and timelines and attached documents. I saw a highlighted line referencing a final review meeting scheduled for next week. I looked back up at Ethan. "Why would you have that kind of influence over Mark's deal?" Ethan held my gaze, still calm. "Because," he said, "they weren't negotiating with someone random." He paused, as if choosing the simplest phrasing. "Technically," he added, "they were negotiating with me." My hands went cold. "You?" I repeated. Ethan nodded. "Not under my name, not directly. It's structured that way for a reason." He glanced at his phone, which buzzed again, and then back to me. Most people don't connect the dots. I felt like the floor had shifted half an inch. Not enough to knock me over. Enough to make me realize I hadn't been standing on what I thought I was. "I didn't know," I said. "I know you didn't," he replied, without defensiveness. "Just a statement of fact." Another buzz. My phone lit up on the edge of his desk. I picked it up and finally looked. A text from my sister, all caps in the first line. "What is Ethan doing to Mark's deal? Call me now." Then my mother. "This is out of control. Fix it." Then my brother. "Please tell me this is a misunderstanding." I set the phone back down slowly, like it was fragile. In the living room, my daughter laughed briefly at something in the movie. It sounded normal again for a second, and the sound landed in me like a reminder of what this was really about. I looked at Ethan. "They don't know it's you," I said, more to myself than to him. Ethan's expression didn't change. "They're about to," he said. I swallowed. "Ethan, what exactly did you tell your team?" He tapped one key, scrolled once, and then looked at me again. "I told them," he said, "to inform Hawthorne Development that the partnership is no longer moving forward." My chest tightened. "No longer?" Ethan's voice stayed level. "And I told them to include the reason." I stared at him. "What reason?" He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look pleased. He didn't look excited. He just said it the way you state a policy. Values, he said, and how they treat family. And as he said it, my phone buzzed again, this time an incoming call from my mother. I watched it ring, my thumb hovering over the screen, and for a moment I didn't move at all. Then I looked at Ethan, and I realized he wasn't acting on impulse. He'd already decided. And now the rest of the family was about to find out what that meant. Then I waited. I let my mother's call ring out. Not because I wanted to punish her, not because I was trying to make a point. I just knew that if I answered in that moment, I'd get pulled into the familiar pattern. Me explaining, her interrupting, and everything turning into a debate about keeping the peace. I wasn't interested in debate anymore. The call stopped. A second later, another one came in. My sister. I stared at the screen until it went quiet again. Ethan watched me without comment, hands still folded in front of him like he was waiting for a meeting to begin. His calm wasn't performative. It was the calm he carried when he'd already read every line of a contract and knew exactly where the leverage sat. My phone buzzed with a new text from my brother. Just tell me what happened. Mark is freaking out. I set the phone down again and looked at Ethan. Did you really tell them to explain why? Yes, he said simply. That's going to blow up, I said. It already has, he replied. I sat back in the chair and tried to take in what I was seeing. The email chain, the attachments, the calendar invite for next week's final review, the way everything was laid out in that clean corporate language that makes huge consequences look like routine admin. My sister hadn't invited my kids to a party. That was the surface. Underneath it, there were negotiations, timelines, stakeholders, a deal that had been treated in our family like it was already a done thing. Ethan's phone buzzed again. He didn't look down. Ethan, I said, keeping my voice low. I need to understand something. How are you connected to this? He didn't sigh or act annoyed. He just turned the laptop slightly so I could see more clearly. On the screen, I caught a signature line in one of the emails. Office of the Chair, Northgate Holdings. I frowned. Northgate? Ethan nodded. Parent group. And you're what exactly? I asked. He hesitated for the first time. Not because he was unsure, but because he was choosing how much to say. I have controlling interest, he said, in the portfolio that owns the group Mark's been courting. I blinked. So you're the chair. Functionally, he said. Yes. I sat there, feeling my thoughts try to line up. It wasn't that Ethan had ever pretended to be someone else. He just didn't talk about his work the way my sister talked about Mark's. Ethan never sold the story. He handled the systems. You never told me, I said quietly. I didn't hide it from you, he replied, steady. It just never came up in a way that mattered. I almost laughed, but nothing about this felt funny. In the living room, the movie credits rolled, and the next one started automatically. I heard my son ask for more popcorn. My daughter's voice answered him softly. They sounded calmer now, like the hurt had receded into something tired. I looked back at Ethan. So what happens now? Ethan's eyes stayed on mine. Now, the deal stays dead, he said. I exhaled through my nose, slow. Forever? He didn't say yes right away. He glanced at the email thread again, the way someone checks a list they've already completed. Mark's company can pursue other projects, he said. This one won't be one of them. I sat forward a little. Because of the party. Ethan's expression didn't change. Not because of the party, he said, calm but firm. Because of what it revealed. I could feel the line he was drawing, and I understood it, even if part of me was still catching up. My kids weren't excluded because of a logistical issue. They were excluded because my sister wanted to make a choice that made her life easier and expected the rest of us to absorb the cost quietly. Ethan didn't absorb costs quietly, not when it came to his family. My phone lit up again, this time with a call from my sister. I watched it ring. The buzzing against the desk sounded like a trapped insect. Ethan nodded toward it once. "Answer if you want," he said. I didn't move right away. My mind ran through the likely script. My sister would start with anger, then panic, then accusation. Then she'd pivot to the version of the story where she was the reasonable one, and I was being emotional. She'd say, "It was Maddie's day." She'd say, "They're too young to care." She'd say, "You're ruining our future." And my mother would be right behind her, insisting that I fix it to preserve the family image. I picked up the phone, not because I felt ready, but because the silence was doing work of its own, and I didn't want to break it accidentally. I wanted to choose the moment. I answered. "Hi." "What is Ethan doing?" my sister said, no greeting, no hesitation. Her voice was sharp, tight at the edges. "Mark just got off the phone with someone at Northgate. They said the deal is dead. Dead. And they said it came from the chair." I kept my voice even. "Yes." A beat of silence. Then, "So you know." "I know," I said. "Are you serious?" she snapped. "Over a birthday party? Over Maddie wanting her friends there? Do you hear yourself?" "It wasn't Maddie," I said calmly. "Excuse me?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't fill the space with emotion. I just stated the fact. "Maddie didn't call me," I said. "You did." She made a sound like she was about to interrupt, so I kept going. "You told me our kids weren't invited," I said. "You told me to handle explaining it, and then Mom told my daughter to pick an outfit for a party she wasn't allowed to attend." My sister inhaled. "Mom didn't mean—" "I'm not saying she did," I said. "I'm saying that's what happened." On the other end, I could hear movement, like she was pacing. "This is not proportional," she said, her voice suddenly louder. "This is hundreds of thousands of dollars. Ethan is destroying Mark's business because my daughter didn't want—" "They cried," I said simply. Silence. I glanced at Ethan. He wasn't watching me to control the call. He was just there, present, listening like he trusted me to handle it. "Our daughter asked me if you didn't like her anymore," I continued, still even. "Our son cried because his sister cried, and we drove home in silence. That's what you did. That's the proportion I'm working with." My sister's voice dropped into something raw. "So you're doing this on purpose?" "I didn't know Ethan was connected to the deal until today," I said. "But yes, now that I know, I'm not asking him to undo it." "You're unbelievable," she said. "You're petty." I didn't react to the label. I just stayed on the facts. "This isn't petty," I said. "It's a boundary." She let out a bitter laugh. "A boundary that bankrupts people." "It's a business decision," I said. "Ethan doesn't partner with people whose judgment around children looks like that." "Stop talking like a lawyer," she snapped. "This is family." I paused, then said, "Family is exactly why this matters." I could hear her breathing now, faster. "Mom is going to lose it," she said. "Dad is going to lose it. Everyone is going to think you've lost your mind." "Everyone was fine with my kids being excluded," I said. "So I'm not using everyone as my compass." Another silence, then quieter. "Mark didn't do anything." I kept my voice level. "Mark benefits from choices you make," I said, "just like my kids suffer from them." My sister's voice cracked a little, then hardened again. "You're going to regret this." I didn't respond to that because I didn't want to turn it into a prediction war. Instead, I said, "If you want to talk about what happened with the kids, we can talk. If you're calling to pressure Ethan to reverse a deal, that's not happening." She went quiet. Then she said, "So that's it." "That's it," I said. She hung up. I sat still for a moment with the phone in my hand. My pulse was steady. My stomach felt tight, but not chaotic. More like I'd just carried something heavy up a flight of stairs. Ethan spoke softly. "You did fine." I nodded once, not trusting myself to say much. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother, calling back to back. I watched the screen light up and dim, light up and dim. Ethan didn't tell me what to do. He didn't reach for my phone. He didn't add fuel. He just turned slightly back toward the laptop, clicked into a different window, and I saw a list of calendar events and document folders. Everything in neat columns, everything time-stamped. He wasn't improvising, he was following procedure. I realized then that this was the first real shift. Quiet, administrative, already documented. Not a fight, not a scene, just a decision moving through the channels it always moved through. I set my phone down again, and for the first time since the aquarium, the house felt still. Then, the office door frame filled with my daughter. She stood there in her socks, holding a crumpled blanket in one hand, her face tired and serious. "Mom," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" I looked at her and nodded, keeping my voice gentle. "Of course." She took a small breath. "Did we do something wrong?" I didn't answer right away. I just held her gaze, feeling the weight of how careful the next words needed to be. Then I waited. I looked at my daughter for a long second, because the question was small, but it carried everything. "No," I said quietly. "You didn't do anything wrong." Her shoulders dropped a little, like she'd been holding them up without realizing it. "Then why?" she started, then stopped. She didn't have the words. She just had the feeling. I scooted my chair back and held a hand out to her. She walked in and leaned against my side the way she did when she wanted comfort, but didn't want to make a big deal out of it. "Sometimes," I said, keeping my voice steady, "grown-ups make choices that aren't fair. And when that happens, it doesn't mean you did something wrong. It means the choice wasn't kind." She blinked, thinking. "So, Aunt Claire wasn't kind?" I didn't want to hand my daughter a label she'd carry around like a rock in her pocket. I also wasn't going to lie. "She made a choice that hurt you," I said, "and that wasn't okay." My daughter nodded slowly, as if she was filing it away. Then she asked something else, softer. "Are we still family?" "Yes," I said immediately. "We're still family, and you're still loved. Always." She looked at Ethan, then back to me. "Okay," she whispered, and I could tell that was all she could hold right then. Ethan stood and walked over, gentle, and kissed her hair. "I'm proud of you," he said, simple. She didn't smile, but she didn't crumble either. She turned and padded back down the hall toward the living room, blanket dragging behind her. When she was gone, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Ethan turned back to his desk. The laptop screen glowed against his face. His phone buzzed again. He ignored it again. My phone lit up with my mother's name for the third time in 10 minutes. I didn't answer. Not because I was trying to punish her. I was just trying to keep the space clear enough to think. There's a certain kind of family situation where the emotional part is loud, and if you respond to the noise, you'll spend the whole night reacting. I'd done that for years, explaining myself, justifying myself, trying to translate basic boundaries into language my mother would accept. But this time, the most important thing wasn't what my mother thought. The most important thing was that my kids understood something, that being excluded wasn't normal, and it wasn't something we had to pretend was fine. So I made a decision in my head that felt almost boring, which is exactly how I wanted it. I said to myself, clearly, Step 1, protect the kids from adult chaos. Step 2, put the facts in writing so nobody can rewrite the story. Step 3, set one boundary and stop negotiating it. That was it. No speeches, no long explanations, no arguing for permission. I looked at Ethan. "I'm going to text my brother," I said. Ethan nodded once, like he approved of the order of operations. I picked up my phone and opened my brother's message thread. My thumb hovered for a second, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted it to be clean. I wrote, "Mark's deal is not my decision. It's Ethan's business choice. The reason is simple. Claire excluded our kids and told me to handle it. Mom told our daughter to pick an outfit for a party she wasn't invited to. The kids cried. We're done discussing attendance or making waves. If you want to talk about how the kids were treated, I'll talk. If you want me to pressure Ethan, I won't. I read it once, then sent it. Then I did something I almost never do. I opened the family group chat. It was already blowing up. Messages stacked so fast I had to scroll to catch up. My mother, call me now. This is family. My aunt, we all need to calm down. My cousin, what even happened? My sister, this is insane. My father, Ethan needs to fix this immediately. I stared at the screen. The thing about group chats is that they create a crowd. And crowds make people perform. They say things they wouldn't say in a quiet room. They pile on because it's easier than being the one person who stops the momentum. I didn't want to fight a crowd, so I didn't. I took a screenshot of the key messages, the ones that mattered, the ones that showed the narrative forming in real time, and saved them. Not to weaponize them, just to keep a record, because in my family, the story always changed 2 weeks later. Then I put my phone face down again. Silence, again, as a choice. Ethan clicked into another folder on his laptop. I watched him for a moment. He wasn't in a rush. He wasn't angry in a chaotic way. He was doing what he always did when a decision needed to be carried through. He was making sure the process was clean. I don't want you to think this is impulsive, he said, still looking at the screen. I don't, I said. He glanced at me briefly, like he was checking if I meant it. There are people who will try to frame this as revenge, he continued, or as you manipulating me. I nodded. They already are. Ethan's mouth tightened, almost imperceptibly. That's why the explanation matters, he said. Not an emotional explanation, a professional one. I leaned forward slightly. What did you tell them to write? Ethan turned the screen toward me again. In an email draft, I saw short, measured language. Nothing dramatic, nothing personal, just an outcome and a rationale. A line stood out because it was so restrained it almost sounded cold. We decline to proceed with partners whose demonstrated judgment conflicts with our standards regarding workplace culture and family values. I looked at him. That's what they told Mark? Yes, he said, and they documented that the decision came from the chair. I swallowed. So Mark knows it's you. He knows now, Ethan said. I sat back and tried to steady my thoughts. Part of me wanted to rewind the afternoon too, before my daughter tugged my sleeve at the jellyfish exhibit, before my mother casually handed my child a detail she wasn't supposed to have, before the hurt turned into this. But I couldn't undo it. I could only respond to what it was. I heard the living room TV change again. My son laughed at something. It was a small sound, and it settled me a little. Kids consider the present more than the past. They bounce back faster than adults do, as long as they feel safe. That was the point. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother this time, not a call. You are humiliating your sister. You are humiliating this family. Call me now. I stared at it for a moment. The word humiliating hit me the way it always did in our family, like image mattered more than harm. I didn't answer right away. I opened my notes app instead and typed out 3 simple lines, like I was writing a small policy for myself. My kids were excluded. We are not attending events that exclude them. We are not doing business with people who treat children that way. Then I wrote one more line, no more phone calls, everything in writing, not because I wanted to escalate, because I wanted clarity, and because clarity is harder to twist. I sent my mother a short text. I'm not discussing this by phone. The kids were excluded and they were hurt. We won't attend events that exclude them. Ethan's business decisions are his. If you want to talk about how the kids were treated, text me. I read it twice before sending it. Then I sent it. Almost immediately, the typing bubbles appeared in the group chat. Someone posted, then someone else. The pace picked up again. I ignored it. Ethan's phone buzzed. This time he looked down, not at the number, but at the notification preview. Then he stood, walked to the door, and closed it gently, more of a seal than a slam. He came back and sat. "Mark is trying to reach my team directly," he said. I nodded once. Of course he is. Ethan clicked into a call log window on his laptop. It showed inbound attempts, timestamps, names, everything organized, everything trackable. It was exactly what he meant by systems doing the work. He didn't look pleased. He looked resolved. "What happens when they show up here?" I asked. "Because they will." Ethan's answer was immediate. "We keep it controlled," he said. "No arguing on the porch, no yelling in the driveway. We don't do that in front of the kids." I felt my shoulders loosen slightly, because he was saying out loud what I needed him to say. "How?" I asked. He glanced at me. "Same way we handle any conflict," he said. "We set terms." I nodded slowly. "Okay." Ethan leaned back, thinking. Then he said, like he was outlining a plan for a board meeting, calm and structured. "If Claire wants to talk, she can come alone. No audience, no bringing Mom as backup, and it happens in the living room, not on the doorstep." "And if she doesn't agree?" I asked. "Then it doesn't happen," he said. There was something steadying about hearing it framed that way. Not cruel, not performative, just a boundary. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. The sink was still half full of dinner things I'd never finished cleaning. The garlic smell was gone now, replaced by that neutral house smell, detergent, fabric softener, whatever the kids had spilled earlier. I rinsed a plate slowly, letting the water run hot. The simple motion helped my brain settle. Behind me, my phone buzzed again. Another text, this one from my sister. "Mark just got the termination notice in writing. It says, 'Values like we're criminals. Fix this. Now.'" I dried my hands and stared at the message. Then I typed a response, keeping it short. "You can come by tomorrow. Alone. No Mom. If you want to talk about what happened with the kids, I'll listen. If you want to pressure Ethan, don't come." I didn't add emojis. I didn't soften it with extra words. I didn't justify myself. I sent it. Then I set the phone down and went back to the living room. My kids were on the couch, leaning into each other under the blanket. My daughter's eyes were heavy. My son had popcorn crumbs on his shirt. The movie played quietly, bright colors, gentle music. I sat down behind them and rested a hand on each of their shoulders, feeling the warmth of them, the small rise and fall of their breathing. Ethan walked in and sat beside me without saying anything. We watched for a few minutes in silence. My phone buzzed again. I didn't pick it up immediately. I waited until the scene on the TV changed and my kids' attention shifted. Then I looked down. A new message, this time from my sister, shorter than the others. "Fine, I'll come. No apology, no acknowledgement, just agreement." I stared at the screen for a moment, then set my phone back down. Ethan looked at me and I gave him a small nod. Tomorrow would be the first real conversation, and tonight, I wasn't going to let anyone pull my focus away from the quiet work of making my kids feel safe again. Then I waited. My sister showed up the next afternoon, right on time. Not early, not late. Just exactly when she said she would. I noticed that first because Claire was rarely on time for anything unless it mattered to her. I was in the kitchen rinsing out a cup when the doorbell rang. The house was quiet in that midday way. Soft light through the front windows, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the kids in the back room with a puzzle and a snack. Ethan was home, not working in the office this time. He was in the living room, sitting in the chair near the window with a folder on his lap, closed, not open like a threat, just present like a boundary. I dried my hands and walked to the front door. Through the glass, I saw Claire standing on the porch alone. No Mark, no Maddie, no Mom waiting in a car as backup. Just my sister, holding her phone too tightly, shoulders up like she'd been bracing herself since morning. I opened the door. "Hi," I said. Claire's eyes flicked past me, scanning the entryway like she expected an audience. When she didn't find one, her expression tightened. "Can I come in?" "Yes," I said, stepping aside. She walked in slowly. Her perfume hit the air for a second, something clean and expensive. She kept her coat on even though it wasn't cold. Ethan stood, polite but not warm. "Claire." "Ethan," she said, and her voice stayed controlled, but it had a strain in it now. I closed the door behind her. "We're going to talk in the living room," I said, "and we're keeping this calm. The kids are here." Claire nodded. "Quick." "Fine." We walked in. Ethan didn't sit right away. He waited until Claire took the couch. Then he sat in the chair across from her again, the same spot, the folder still closed on his lap. I sat on the other end of the couch, angled slightly toward Claire. Close enough to listen. Far enough that it didn't feel like I was cornering her. For a moment, no one spoke. Claire's gaze drifted to the wall with the framed photos. Our kids at the beach, one from last Thanksgiving, one of Ethan holding our son on his shoulders. Things we didn't think about most days, but that suddenly looked like evidence. Claire swallowed. "So," she said, like she was trying to start with something neutral, "Mark is panicking." Ethan didn't respond. Claire looked at me instead. "He's been working on this deal for months." I kept my voice level. "I know." "And now it's gone," she said, sharper. "They called him and said it was terminated because of values. Like he's some kind of—" She stopped herself and took a breath. "Like we're some kind of problem." Ethan's tone stayed calm. "It's a professional decision," he said. "We're not here to debate the wording." Claire's face flushed. "But it's not professional. It's personal. You did this because you were mad." Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't lean forward. He didn't gesture with his hands. He just said, "I did it because I won't attach our companies to people whose judgment around children looks like that." Claire stared at him, then let out a short, frustrated laugh that didn't sound happy. "So that's your official position now. Judgment." Ethan nodded once. "Yes." Claire turned to me again, eyes bright. "Are you hearing this? He's acting like we're monsters." I answered the way I'd been answering for days. Facts, not heat. "My daughter asked me if you didn't like her," I said. Claire's mouth opened slightly, then shut. Her eyes flicked down to her phone and back up again, like she wanted to escape into messages and numbers where she could control the story. "It was a birthday party," she said, quieter, as if lowering her volume would make the point stronger. "It wasn't meant to hurt anyone." "But it did," I said. Claire's jaw tightened. "They're young. They'll forget." Ethan's voice stayed even. "That's not a justification," he said. "That's a reason people give when they don't want to take responsibility." Claire's shoulders lifted. "So, what do you want? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry." It came out fast, clipped, like she was paying a fee. I didn't respond to it. Claire noticed. "What? You want me to get on my knees?" "No," I said. "I want you to be honest." That landed differently. Claire's expression shifted, almost like the anger didn't know where to go when it couldn't bounce off a fight. "I'm being honest," she said. I stayed calm. "No, you're trying to end the conversation," I said. "That's not the same thing." Claire stared at me for a long moment. Her hands were tight around her phone, knuckles pale. Ethan didn't jump in. He stayed quiet, letting the room hold the weight. I could hear the kids in the back room, faintly, pieces clicking into place, my son's small voice asking my daughter if a piece was the corner one. That sound anchored me. I looked at Claire and kept my tone steady. "I'm going to say this once," I said. "We're not discussing the contract. That's Ethan's decision, and it's already documented. We're discussing what happened with the kids." Claire's eyes narrowed. "It's all connected." "It's connected because you made it connected," I said. "You made a choice that hurt 2 children, and now you're surprised there were consequences." Her face tightened again. "So you admit you're punishing us?" I shook my head once, slow. No, I said. I'm protecting my family. The difference is important. Claire sat back, breathing harder now. I could tell she wanted to say a dozen things at once, about fairness, about money, about how everyone would view her, about how Mom was reacting. But none of that was the core. So I kept it simple. Why? I asked. Did you exclude them? Claire blinked, and I saw her try to reach for the safer answer, the one she'd already used. Because Maddie wanted her friends, she said quickly. Because it was a school thing. Because the venue. I held up my hand slightly, not aggressively, just as a gentle stop. Claire, I said, quiet. That's the script you used on the phone. Her eyes flashed. It's true. I waited. Just a beat. The kind of pause that gives someone room to either dig in or tell the truth. Claire's throat moved as she swallowed. She looked away, toward the photos again, then toward the hallway, then back to me. Her voice dropped. It wasn't exactly like that. Ethan's posture didn't change. He didn't react. He just watched, calm, the way he watched meetings where people finally got to the part that mattered. I kept my tone soft. Then tell me what it was. Claire's eyes were glossy now, but she blinked and forced them steady, like she refused to cry in my living room even if it cost her something. She took a breath. I didn't think it would turn into this, she said, almost to herself. I stayed still. Start from the beginning, I said. Claire nodded once, very small. And for the first time since she arrived, she looked less like someone here to demand a fix, and more like someone who had come because she couldn't hold the truth by herself anymore. She opened her mouth to speak again. Then she stopped, inhaled slowly, and looked down at her hands like she was bracing for what she was about to admit. Then I waited. Claire's voice, when it finally came, was quieter than I expected. I told you Maddie didn't want little kids there, she said. That wasn't true. I didn't move. I didn't react with a gasp or a lecture. I just let her finish. Claire kept looking down at her hands like her phone might rescue her if she stared hard enough. Maddie never said that, she repeated. She didn't even bring it up. Ethan's eyes stayed on Claire, steady and unreadable. I asked the question that mattered, and I kept it simple. So why did you say it? Claire swallowed. Because I didn't want it to look like it was my idea. I nodded once, very small. But it was. Claire's mouth tightened. Yes. The air in the room felt heavier, but it wasn't chaotic. It was the feeling of a locked drawer finally opening. Not pretty, just real. Claire took a breath and continued, and now that she'd stepped into honesty, the words started to come with less effort. Everyone always talks about your kids, she said, still not looking at me. How sweet they are, how polite, how well they do in school, how easy they are. I didn't correct her. My kids weren't easy. They were kids. They had tantrums and messy mornings and stubborn moments like everyone else. But I understood what she meant. Claire's voice tightened. And Maddie's been hard lately. Ethan shifted slightly, not aggressive, just attentive. She's been having these mood swings, Claire said. She talks back. She's been getting in trouble. She's not mean, but she's intense. And every time we're at a family thing, someone says something like, "Oh, your cousin would never do that," or "Look how calm they are." She shook her head. Even if they don't say it out loud, I feel it. I stayed calm. So you wanted one day where Maddie didn't feel compared. Claire nodded, eyes still down. Yes. I thought if it was just her friends, she'd shine. No comments, no side-by-side, no quiet judgments. And you didn't think about my kids, I said. Claire's throat moved. I didn't think about them enough, she admitted. I thought you'd understand, or you'd just go along with it. That hit close to something familiar. In our family, going along was often treated like love. I kept my voice even. You asked me to explain to my kids why they weren't invited. Claire flinched. I know. And Mom told my daughter to pick an outfit, I added. Claire's eyes closed for a moment. I didn't know Mom did that. But you knew they'd find out, I said. Claire didn't argue. She just nodded again. Ethan spoke then, his tone controlled and precise. What you did wasn't a logistical decision, he said. It was a values decision, and it showed us how you handle power when you think it won't cost you. Claire looked up at him, and for the first time her eyes were wet enough that she couldn't hide it. I'm not proud of it, she said, voice breaking slightly. I wasn't thinking clearly. Ethan didn't soften his posture. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't going to be moved by emotion alone. The contract isn't coming back, he said. Claire's face tightened like she'd been expecting that, but still hoped it wouldn't be said out loud. Ethan, she said carefully, Mark didn't do this. He didn't make the decision. He didn't even know until… Ethan nodded once. That's not the point. Claire inhaled sharply. Then what is the point? Because I'm sitting here telling you I was wrong. Ethan's voice stayed level. The point is that my companies don't partner with people who treat children as disposable, he said. Not because I'm trying to punish you, because I need to be able to trust judgment, and I don't. The words weren't dramatic. That was what made them land. Claire sat back, wiping at her face with the side of her hand. She didn't sob. She didn't collapse. She looked tired. I watched her for a moment and then asked, Are you here because you're sorry, or because the deal is gone? Claire didn't answer immediately, and for a second, I worried she'd pick the wrong answer out of pride. Then she exhaled slowly. I'm here because I'm sorry, she said. The deal is the consequence, but I was wrong before any of that happened. I held her gaze, still calm. Then the apology needs to be to them, I said, not to me. Claire nodded. I know. I didn't rush her, but I made the boundary clear. And it needs to be real, not quick, not sorry you feel that way. Claire swallowed again. I can do that. Ethan stayed quiet, letting me lead that part. I stood and walked to the hallway. I didn't call the kids like it was a performance. I just went to the back room and crouched near them. My daughter was sitting cross-legged by the puzzle, her brow furrowed in concentration. My son was leaning on a cushion, holding a piece like it was a treasure. Hey, I said softly. My daughter looked up. Hi. Aunt Claire is here, I said. She wants to talk to you for a minute, only if you feel okay about it. My daughter's face shifted, cautious. Why? Because she wants to say something important, I replied. And you can decide if you want to listen. If you don't, you can stay here. My son asked, small and direct. Is she mad? No, I said. She's not mad. My daughter stood slowly. She glanced at my son, then at me. Okay, she said, not eager, but willing. My son got up too, following his sister without thinking much about it. We walked back to the living room together. Claire stood the moment she saw them, like she understood this wasn't her space to sink into the couch and defend herself. Hi, she said gently. My daughter stayed close to me, her fingers lightly gripping my sleeve. My son hovered near Ethan, because he trusted Ethan's steadiness. Claire took a breath. Her hands were empty now. She'd put her phone down on the entry table, like she didn't want anything in her grip. I want to apologize, she said, looking at them, not at me. About the birthday party. My daughter didn't respond. Claire didn't fill the silence with excuses. She kept going. I made a choice, she said. And it hurt you. And that wasn't fair. My son frowned. Why didn't you want us there? Claire's face tightened, but she didn't dodge it. It wasn't that I didn't want you, she said carefully. I made the wrong decision because I was thinking about myself, not about your feelings. My daughter's voice was small. Did Maddie not want us? Claire shook her head. No, she said. Maddie didn't say that. That was my mistake. I said that. And I'm sorry. My daughter stared at her, and I could see the child logic doing its work, sorting out who had chosen what. Claire added, You didn't do anything wrong. You're good kids. You didn't deserve to feel left out. My son's eyes got shiny. We cried, he said, like he was reporting something important. I know, Claire said, and her voice wavered. And I'm sorry you cried. My daughter asked, Are we still family? Claire's face softened fully for the first time. Yes, she said. We're still family, and I want to do better. I watched my kids closely because this was their moment, not mine. My daughter was quiet, then asked, Can we see Maddie? Claire nodded. Yes, she said. If you want, I can bring her by. And if you're okay with it, we can do something small, just cousins. Something that includes you. My daughter's grip on my sleeve loosened a little. My son nodded quickly because that's how 5-year-olds move through pain. Fast, if the ground feels safe again. Ethan spoke then, calm and warm. That's a good start, he said. Claire looked at him, hope flickering in her expression like she wanted that to mean the business decision would change. Ethan didn't leave it vague. But the contract is still my decision, he said evenly. And it stays as it is. Claire's shoulders sank, and for a moment, she looked like she might argue. Then she didn't. She just nodded once, the way someone nods when they've run out of angles. Okay, she said quietly. I understand. That was the third-party confirmation she needed, even if she didn't like it. The decision wasn't a mood. It was recorded. Final. Procedural. Claire wiped her face again, then looked at me. I'll bring Maddie by tomorrow, she said, if that's okay. I nodded. Tomorrow is fine, I said. Claire took a breath and looked around the room again. The photos, the toy bin, the quiet order of the house. Her voice softened. I didn't realize, she said, about Ethan, about how serious he is about this stuff. Ethan didn't respond to that. He didn't need to. Claire picked up her coat from where she'd placed it and walked toward the door. She stopped once at the entryway and looked back. I am sorry, she said again, this time less like a transaction and more like she meant it, even if it took me too long. I nodded once. Thank you for saying it to them, I replied. Then she left. When the door closed, the house went quiet again. My daughter climbed into my lap without asking, which she hadn't done in a while. My son sat on the rug near Ethan's feet and started rolling a toy car back and forth like nothing had happened. Ethan opened the folder on his lap for the first time. Inside were 2 printed pages and a simple summary sheet, deal timeline, termination note, and the exact language his team had sent. Everything dated. Everything clean. He didn't show it to me like a trophy. He just placed it on the coffee table. We keep this, he said quietly, so nobody rewrites it later. I nodded, because I knew exactly what he meant. And for the first time in days, I felt the situation settle into something solid. A timeline, a truth, and a boundary that didn't move. Then I waited. That evening, after dinner and baths, the house slipped back into its usual rhythm. The kids were still a little quiet, but not fragile. My son wanted the same bedtime book twice. My daughter asked for her nightlight to stay on a little longer. Ethan didn't tease them about it. He just said, Of course, the way you say it when you mean, you're safe here. When they were finally asleep, I went back to the kitchen and cleaned without rushing. Warm water, soap, the soft scrape of a sponge against a plate. Nothing dramatic. Just the ordinary work that tells your nervous system the day is over. Ethan sat at the table with a mug of tea and the folder closed beside him. He wasn't staring at it. He didn't need to. The decision was already made, written down, and carried through. There was a quiet kind of peace in that. I dried my hands and sat across from him. "Do you feel bad?" I asked, not accusing, just checking. Ethan thought for a moment. "I feel clear," he said. "I don't like that the kids got hurt. I don't regret that we responded." I nodded. "I keep replaying the aquarium," I admitted. Her face when she asked if she did something wrong. Ethan's eyes softened slightly. "That's why we don't let it slide," he said. "If we teach them to accept being dismissed, they'll spend years unlearning it." We sat in silence for a minute. Outside, a car passed, headlights moving across the wall. The house settled the way it does at night. Small creaks, the faint hum of appliances, the kind of quiet you can lean on. The next day, Claire came back, like she said she would. This time she brought Maddie. They stood in our entryway with a small cake box and a bag that looked like it held craft supplies. Maddie looked uncertain at first, then shyly handed my kids 2 folded cards with messy handwriting and a few stickers stuck on crooked. Claire didn't try to control the moment. She didn't hover. She let the kids decide the pace. My daughter opened her card slowly, like she didn't want to get her hopes up too fast. Then she read it again, and her shoulders lowered. Maddie's note was simple, an invitation to a do-over cousin party at our house that weekend. Just the cousins. Board games. Pizza. No big venue. No special rules. Just inclusion. My son hugged Maddie like nothing had ever happened, because that's how he is. My daughter took longer. She watched Maddie's face, watched Claire's face, and then she stepped forward and hugged them both, carefully, like she was testing whether the ground was stable. It was. The cousin party happened on Saturday. The kids made a mess with sprinkles. They played until they were loud and sweaty and happy. Claire stayed in the background, helping when asked, quiet when not. Ethan grilled in the backyard like it was any other weekend. No one brought up the contract. No one begged. No one tried to renegotiate the boundary. And that was the point. A few weeks later, my parents stopped pushing. My dad made one short comment at a family dinner, something like, "I get why Ethan did it," said without fanfare. My mom didn't agree out loud, but she stopped trying to recruit people to her side. The group chat went back to weather complaints and grocery store photos. Mark's company didn't collapse. They found smaller work, different work. They were fine, just not elevated by that one big contract they'd been counting on. Claire and I were polite after that. We talked. We were cordial. We could be in the same room without tension snapping between us. But the relationship didn't go back to what it had been, and I didn't pretend it should. Some things heal with time. Some things heal with boundaries, and some things heal by staying changed. On a quiet Sunday morning, I found myself folding laundry while the kids played in the next room. Ethan was at the counter reading the news on his phone, calm and present. I remember looking at the ordinary mess, pencils on the table, a half-finished drawing, a toy dinosaur under the chair, and feeling grateful for the simple order of our home. Not because we won, not because someone else lost, because my kids learned something without being lectured. They learned that love doesn't require them to accept being treated as less than, and they learned that silence can be a choice, not surrender. A month after all of this, a friend from my daughter's school pulled me aside at pickup. She kept her voice low and said, "Can I ask you something kind of awkward? It's about my sister and a family situation." The way she said it told me it wasn't really awkward. It was painful, and she didn't know where to put it. I told her, "Yes, we can talk." Because once you've seen how quickly adults can make kids feel small, you start noticing it everywhere. And if you know how to respond with calm and clarity, you don't keep that to yourself. If you made it this far, thanks for spending this time with me. If you want more real-life stories told calmly and honestly, please like the video and subscribe. And tell me in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. 2 popular stories will be up next, so stay close.